Hi, this is Everett, Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my studio. Today we're going to do another watercolor demonstration. I'm broadcasting live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And this is Everett's Watercolors. And I'm broadcasting from Chesapeake, Virginia. And I'm in my studio today with my wife, Gloria.
Welcome, everyone.
And she'll be monitoring the chat room and also the broadcast. And see here we got Brazen. Hello, Brazen. Welcome aboard. Today I'm going to do something here today. I think might be interesting, and I think I'm going to do something a little bit not different, but something unique. I was walking last weekend doing some plein air, like I do every weekend. And I went down an old trail, which I hadn't been, it's probably been 2 or 3 years since I went down this trail. And I found something new on the trail I hadn't seen before. I found a covered bridge. So that's what I'm going to paint today, is a covered bridge. So let me go to my main camera, my overhead camera, and let me show you a picture I did. Okay, this is a photo I took of the covered bridge. You can see here it's a little trail going down here, and it was a bridge here before several years ago, but now there's a covered bridge over top. So I took a picture of that. And you can see it's pre-autumn, autumn seen a couple weeks ago. And so I thought that'd be an interesting subject today. So that's going to be our subject today, covered bridge. And I did a drawing, which I normally do, my design drawing. Let me bring it up a little closer. So it's just basically the drawing. The other parts of the painting is not very, the most important part is right here. That's the impact area, is the bridge itself. Everything else is kind of outside the parts of the painting, the trees and the pathway and so forth. So the main interest, the main subject is the bridge. So that's what I drew here in my preliminary sketch. Okay, let me move this aside for a second. Now I took another photograph a couple of days ago. I went back. The sun was out, and I wanted to get a shadow pattern across the pathway. So I got another photograph of the same scene basically, but this has a little nice shadow pattern across the pathway. So that's something I'm going to put in today in a painting. Okay, and I did a little value study, and you can see here I got the bridge, and I also went ahead and practiced a little bit of shadow pattern I'm going to add into the painting at the end of the painting. Okay, so those are my preparation steps. A drawing, a design drawing, and then a little value sketch, and then I did a little study on the shadow pattern. Then I transferred it to a quarter sheet of Gemini watercolor paper. This measures 11 inches wide and 15 inches long. And I'm going to do a portrait today, lengthwise, because of the subject matter and the situation I'm going to paint. So it'll be just like the photograph, it'll be a portrait. Over here on my palette, I've got colors I'm going to use today. Cerulean Blue up here in the top of my cool colors. A little bit of Ultramarine Deep. Then I come into the warm area because it's going to have some fall colors. I'm going to use Pyro Red, a little bit of Permanent Yellow Orange. And then I got Permanent Yellow Lemon down here in the corner. Then I'll use Yellow Ochre and Burnt Sienna right here at the bottom, and then a little bit of green number 1. Okay, so those are the colors I'm going to use for my palette today. I'll put those aside. Those are Holbein Artists Watercolors, which I have on my website and in my palette. And if you want to go to my website, I can show you. I'll give you a QR code here from my website. You see, off to the left there is the QR code for my Everett Watercolors website. And you just point your camera at that, and then touch your camera icon there for take a picture, and you'll see it'll take you right straight to my website. Right straight to my website. And then later on, if you want to, I'll leave it on for just a few more seconds. Later on, if you want to go to Facebook, there's a Facebook QR code. That'll take you directly to my Facebook page, which is Everett Watercolors Art Group. And there you can download your drawings or sketches or whatever from today's lesson or any previous lesson I've given, and post them on my Facebook page. So you just point your camera at the QR code, and then you touch your camera. You just touch that little square that goes around it once you put the camera on it, and then it'll take you right to the Facebook page.
We have a comment that it would be a good series to go back when the leaves change, and if we ever get any snow, which we really don't get too much of around here, but the change of the seasons, because it's such a nice scene.
Yeah, good comment. Yes, the comment was about changing the scenes and so forth. So, yes, that particular area that I just took a picture of, I'll probably go back there several times. There'll be probably a winter scene. Maybe I'm looking for some snow. As soon as I see snow, I'm going to do a snow scene. And then, of course, springtime's a good time, and of course, the full colors of the summer. So those are the seasons of the year. I look forward to them every year. So, okay, let's go back to my drawing board, painting table here. What I'm going to start with mixing up some color. I'm going to start with my two larger brushes here. These are silver brush natural hair Hake brushes. Okay, and they're goat hair, but they hold a lot of water and a lot of paint. So they're really good for getting the paper wet and dry paint. So I'm going to wet up the large one, the large Hake, with just plain water, and I'm going to pre-wet the background. Okay, and let that stay a little bit damp. Okay, but I'm going to start with the impact area, which is going to be the bridge itself. And so I'm going to mix up. Now I'm going to make my colors a little bit brighter than what's on the photograph. So I'm going to be using a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of burnt sienna mixture down here. So I'm going to start with the impact area, and this is going to be my focal point. So today's lesson is going to be once you get your drawing done and your drawing plan, your painting plan together, you want to start in an area. And I'm going to start with the impact area. And this is the impact area is going to be the covered bridge. Sometimes leave the impact area till the end of the painting, and then put highlights in there. But in this case, I'm going to start with the impact area in the very beginning. And that way, I'll show you a reason why I do that as we go along. But I'm going to use a little brighter colors. It was the day I took the picture of the bridge. It was a little dull that day. The sun was not out. It was a gray, cloudy day. When I took that one with the shadow pattern, you can see it was a much brighter colors. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and put in the bridge part. These are the boards at the bottom. Yeah, I can remember walking across this particular bridge several years ago, and it was just a bridge with a little bit of water underneath, a pathway, and I did a painting way back then, several years ago. It's been over 5 years, I guess, 4 or 5 years, and I did one there of the sunrise coming through the trees over the bridge. But then I was taking a walk the other day and looking for another scene, and I happened to think about the bridge. I said, well, let me go back and see what's going on. Well, sure enough, they've constructed an overhead bridge. And that's to protect the wood. You know, the covered bridges, you don't see many of those nowadays. In the past, there were a lot of covered bridges. And I've painted quite a few. I painted one a long time ago, and I've done several others. They're kind of hard to find anymore, because number one, they were constructed out of wood, and nowadays they build everything out of metal, and the covered bridges are no longer like they used to be. So when I find a covered bridge somewhere, I always like to capture it. It's just one of the things I like to do. It makes me think of the past. It makes me think of some of the covered bridges I've seen throughout the country. And it's a nostalgic thing, I think. Brings back a lot of memories of different places. Okay, now I'm going to put a little bit of green up here on the rooftop. And I'm using a little brighter color than the actual photograph, but I think I want to do that because this is the impact area. So I'm going to use brighter color to separate it from the other colors, which will be autumn. So I'm going to use a spectrum of colors that are autumn colors, oranges and yellows and a little bit of red and some browns. But we also got green. There was some green trees out there and green bushes. So the green is part of the autumn scene also. Okay. Now I think what I'll do is I'll re-wet that background again. So I'm going to put in the background here. So I'm going to re-wet with a large Hake, just plain water. So I'm going to do a little wet on wet now for the background, and some of this also here on the sides, middle ground, background, middle ground, and then we'll save the path till last, and I'll treat that a little differently. But here I just want to get some color here in the background. And get a little back here. Okay, now that I've got that down there, I got the paper wet, and let me see. I want to go in and I'm going to smooth that water out a little bit. So I'll use the big brush here. This is the synthetic brush from Holbein, the 1-incher. So I'm going to smooth out the water. But it's pretty wet, which is what I want, because I'm going to do a little wet on wet technique. Okay, so the first color I'm going to put in is going to be some green. I'm going to use a little bit of green, because there's some greenery in the background. And I'm going to add in a little bit of yellow ochre and burnt sienna. So I'll start out with those colors. I just get some colors started. Now I'm going to move to a bigger brush. A lot of browns. This is all autumn. A lot of browns, a lot of yellow ochres. I'm going to pick up a little bit of cerulean blue. There's a little bit of sky color up there on the top, so I'm going to put a little bit of sky color, just peeking through some of those trees. And that'll mix in with the browns and mix in with the greens, so it'll all go together. A little hint of the blue sky popping through there in the background. So it's wet on wet. It's really wet, so it's going to take a mixture of paints, different colors. A little more green. That's green number 1. It'll mix in with the browns and the blues, so it'll change that color. You have a variety of colors here in the background. These are trees and bushes and so forth. And put a little bit of green in here, in the background of this tree, or background of the bridge. Okay, so I'm covering all the areas in the background up to the up to the pathway with a variety of basic colors. Get some more greenery down here in the foreground. So I'm moving foreground here, moving toward the foreground past the right side of the pathway here. Put some more color in there. A little more brown. A little more greens. I remember watercolor. It may look dark when it goes down wet, but when it dries, the water evaporates and it gets much lighter. Okay, now I'm going to take my spray bottles. This is palette in a bottle dot spray with the yellow orange, with a yellow orange. What I'm going to put in here, I'm going to do a dot spray. I'm going to prepare by going in, priming the pump. Using a dot spray, I use a very light mist. And you can find my palette in a bottle dot spray on Everett Watercolors, sold exclusively on everettwatercolors.com. And I'm going to put in some dot sprays here. These are some of the foliage you saw in the photograph. So we'll start out with a little wet on wet application. Then I've got also palette in a bottle dot spray with permanent yellow lemon. And these bottles are sold on my website, everettwatercolors.com, exclusively on Everett Watercolors. And my wife Gloria and I searched for these bottles for over 2 years before we found one. The original manufacturer went out of business, and we had to go search for another one. So it took us 2 years to find that. Okay, I'm going to let that dry a little bit. It's really soaking wet, so let that dry. And I think I can go ahead and put the pathway in while it's still a little bit wet around the edges here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start out with, I'm going to take the green out of my palette. I want green on the pathway. Let's see. Take this out here. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of yellow ochre. Okay. And I'm going to start in here with yellow ochre here in the beginning. A light value. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of burnt sienna. And it'll get darker. As I come forward, the pathway is going to get a little bit darker. So I'll go from a light color to a darker medium color, which is burnt sienna. Gradually get darker as I come forward. Then I'm going to pick up a little bit of quinacridone violet. A bit of quinacridone violet mixed in with that burnt sienna. It'll get a little bit darker. So the color is changing a little bit as I come forward. Make a colorful pathway here. It takes up a lot of space in the painting, so I want it to be a little bit colorful. And again, I'm not using the actual colors that I saw in the photograph. I'm using the colors that I want to use. The pathway is getting a little darker as I come forward. Yeah, maybe pick up a little bit of ultramarine blue, just a little bit, just a touch. Make it much darker down here. So ultramarine blue mixed in with that quinacridone violet and burnt sienna. And so I've got a light to dark value as I come forward. Yeah, so I've covered a whole quarter sheet of paper with paint now. So I've got the area covered, basically. Okay. And that's kind of my first object was to get the paint down and cover the. Now, what I want to do now is I'm going to take my palette in a bottle with just plain water in it, and I'm going to just take just light drops of water on top of the pathway, because what I want to do is I'm going to build some patterns back here. So those patterns will give me rough texture in the paper, because wet on wet. So I'll get some balloons. I'll get some balloons here on the paper on purpose, and they'll give me texture. Okay, I have on my spray bottles, I have several videos on YouTube. You can go to YouTube, Everett Watercolors, and you can see several videos on YouTube with different spray bottle techniques. And I use a light pressure, and I also show you how to take care of the bottles, how to clean them, and also how to use them. So right now, we're still pretty wet up there. I'm going to let it just kind of let it dry just a little bit more. And I think I can introduce a few more strokes here. I'm going to get some more green, and kind of go back in here and pick up some more green. Get a little darker in some areas. I'm picking up a little bit of green mixture mixed in with burnt sienna. I'm building up some of the foliage around here. So you can do this while it's wet on wet, because wet on wet, you're adding pigment to an area, and then the wet paper will make it spread. So you have lots of flexibility working wet and wet. You can do a lot of different designs while the paper is still wet. You can see here there's some texture building up here, making the trees. So I'll bring it up a little bit closer. You can see it's still very wet, but you can see some of the texture now being built on the paper. Okay, so the blossoms that I created with a spray bottle will create a very interesting texture down here, which is what I'm looking for. And I'm gonna get some more greenery over here, I think, on the side. So there was some low-lying bushes here on the side of the pathway. They had green, a lot of green leaves, and were still very, very lively. So you see a lot of greens, a lot of greenery even in the wintertime, with evergreens, and some of the leaves are still green, very green. So as I come forward, I get the green a little bit richer up here. As I come forward, as I go back, the greens get a little bit duller. It gives the impression of depth. So as you come forward, the colors get a little bit brighter. As they go back, they get a little bit duller. Okay. So I'm setting up the framework here for adding in the darker areas when I get this all right up here, covering all the white spots. Okay. I'll wait for it to dry a little bit more. You can still see the shine on the paper. When you see the shine on the paper, it's still wet. You see the shine? That shows that the water is still wet, very damp on the paper. So it's about, I'm waiting for the shine to go away, and that's when I can add in some more texture here is what I'm waiting for. Okay, now here on the pathway, it's pretty well dried out here, so I'm going to get bubbles of water here. But I want to create those blossoms to give me texture. So I'm doing those on purpose to give me the shapes and texture in my background. Okay. Now what I think I'll do now is I'll go in now. I'm going to add in some more some more yellow orange with my dot spray bottle, palette in a bottle. And I'm going to get a little more color over here on the side. Just light tapping motion. Very light tapping. So you can see the individual dots now. As I bring that up, you can see individual dots there. And because it's still wet, it spreads out. It spreads out. So I'm still getting a very artistic, but also abstract. It's an abstract look at this point. That's what I want. Abstract background, no definition at this point, other than the impact area. The impact area, which is the bridge, is the only detail I have at this point showing any structure. And you can see the pathway. But everything else is sort of fuzzy, and that's what I want. I want an abstract look at this point. Don't want any definition other than where the bridge is. The paper's still very wet. So what you do at this stage is you kind of keep your eye on the drying process of the paper. And I don't want to use a blow dryer today because that makes it go too fast. So let it dry naturally. And let's see, I'm going to add a little more color. Let's see, now I'm going to use the yellow lemon in the dot spray bottle. Use a little bit of yellow lemon, get some yellow in there. Okay. And go back to putting in some more of that green. So now I'm adding another layer of green. Now it's still wet, but I'm adding another layer of green on top because it dries lighter as it dries. So I'm adding another layer of green on what I had before. And I can see some of the areas lightening up on me, so that's where I'm going and putting in more paint to darken up some of those areas. Not darken, but add more color to those areas that are lightening up on me. So I'm watching the drying process. And it's going to dry much lighter. I'm adding more greens, adding more greens. Okay. Okay, I'm going to use the hair dryer. So we'll speed it up just a little bit. So I did a little wet on wet technique in the background, and I also used wet on wet down. Well, not wet on wet, but I used a little bit of combination down here on the pathway. But my main wet on wet was around the background and middle ground area here. So I'm going to dry it off just a little bit, speed up the process. Okay, all right, now what I'm going to do now is going to add in some trees. So I'm going to mix up burnt sienna, a little bit of ultramarine blue, maybe a dark brown. I'm going to add in some trees now. These are trees that are behind the bushes. And the paper is still a little bit damp, so I'm going to get a soft edge, which is all right. Here in the background, I just want to show indications of some trees mixed in with this foliage. Some of these tree trunks showing with some of the darker colors, and then the leaves from the leaves that are on a tree that are turning different colors of autumn. So I want to get started here on some shapes. So the paper is still a little bit damp, but I went ahead, as soon as I get the shine gone, then I can start adding some color. And you'll see there's a little bit of texture on the trees, and I'm going to go back and put a little bit more on as it dries. These are in the background, so the only ones defined, the trees are only defined trees are the ones up here closer to this section right here. As they go further back, they get a little less defined. Okay. You can put as many trees, but I just wanted to show enough trees in there to show that there was trees in the background. Most of these tall bushes here are you don't see the trees at all, the trunks. Okay, and my next step would be to, let's see, I'm going to dry some more. I'll try to do this in my final drying here. We'll get into some more detail. I use a tissue to pick up some of the excess moisture here on the pathway. Still damp. Check with the back of your hand. If it feels cool, it's still damp. So keep on drying a little bit more. So controlling the amount of moisture that's on the paper is very important for the brush strokes. Okay, far enough. All right, now I'm going to start putting some more detail on here now. Okay, first thing I'll do, I want to go back and put some more detail on the bridge. Let's start with the number one. The inside of the bridge is darker because it's in shadow, so I'm going to put some darker color here inside the bridge. This part is in these slats and so forth. These are in shadow. So it'll be a little bit darker. So I'm putting in the area of the bridge. Inside the bridge is dark. It's in shadow. And underneath the roof, it will be dark. Get Put a shadow pattern under the roof. So these are dark shadow colors. I'm using the dark brown with a little bit of ultramarine blue and a little bit of burnt sienna. Give me a dark brown. This one's dark. And this section here, I'm gonna make these because these are underneath the roof there. These won't be as dark as the other part, but they'll be in shadow section. A little bit of shadows that are falling on that forward edge there. Okay. All right. And then under the bridge itself, there's a shadow underneath the bridge from the rooftop. We'll put that in. So this is the bridge, the bottom of the shelter here, or this is the bridge section, the bridge surface underneath the shelter. The cover will be in shadow. Okay. Then I had this part here. You could see a few of the sides on this side. This part here was covered with trees, but just a hint of the fact that there was this right side of the bridge would show up a little bit. And I'm going to put a little more green up in that top. It's a little brighter than what the color was, but this is okay, as I want to make my impact area a little bit brighter color than the rest of the painting. You use your brightest colors, you use your lightest colors in your impact area. Okay. Adding a little more shadow, just to make these a little bit darker. This side over here, this is going to be covered with bushes anyway. Okay. I think what I'll do is I'll add a little. Now I'm going to add just a little more detail to some of these trees. Sorry, so I'm going to add just a little touch of tree. So burnt sienna, a little bit of ultramarine blue, a little more blue. I'll make some of these trees a little bit darker here in the foreground. These are forward, so to make them look like they're a little bit closer, which they are. Now that the paper has gotten a lot drier, the paint is going on. Okay, that's just indications there. All right, now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some more. Now I'm going to take the dot spray bottles again, palette in the bottle, dot sprayer. And now that the paper is dry, Now I'm gonna put some dry on top of drop paper. Now these will show up as dots, and that's exactly what I want. They're a little more definition of the actual shapes. Now I'm using these to give me some shapes of leaves and so forth on the trees. And then I'm going to put in some yellow. Again, dot spray, light tapping motion. A little more orange over here. Putting in some nice dots, nice dot pattern. Okay, and then I'm going to take, now what I do now, once I get the dots down, and I take the dot sprayer with the just the water in, and then I hold it up a little, about 8 inches high, and I spray on, and that breaks those little dots up a little bit. It gives me a pattern now of leaves, which is what I want. Okay. All right. Gotta let that dry, and I put the dry drawer on just a little bit. Yeah. You see those dots? They're very wet, but they're the leaves that I'm going to show here once I let this dry a little bit. Let me dry it up a little bit. Okay, that's going to still stay wet for a while. That's okay. I'm just going to let it dry. I just want to dry it just a little bit, but it's still, you can see it's still very wet. You can see the wetness of those dots. But they're going to dry as leaves out here. It's up close. One last technique I want to show you that I'm going to do today is I'm going to add some more texture here in the foreground. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to mix up a dark color, a darker greenish color. Let's see, let's get this out of the way. Bring in some Hooker's green, burnt sienna, a little bit of ultramarine blue, more green. Okay, make a nice big puddle of dark green. I'll put a little bit of Payne's gray in there just to darken up even more. And I'm going to add more water to this puddle. I'm going to add a lot of water. Okay, now I'm going to take a natural sponge, and I'm going to, first of all, I soak it in the water just to get it wet. Okay, so I have a damp sponge now. Now I go ahead and dip it into the paint. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in some texture here on the side. These are the low bushes on the side of the pathway here. Go to the base of the trees. And this is another way to get a nice pattern of, instead of using brushwork, which I've done many times before with making trees and bushes and so forth. This makes it irregular shape, and also gives you a nice textured look for foliage. So I got some bushes over here that are right along the edge of the trail here, and some of them are overlapping the edge of the pathway. And I can put some green up here now in these trees using a sponge. And over here now I'm going to get a lot more, some more greenery over here. Okay. Now the last thing I want to do is just show you another technique that I wanted to employ. I'll overlap this edge of this pathway a little bit. Here, okay. And cover up some more of these trees up here in the corner. Okay. All right, so what I had planned on doing was a little splatter. So let me take, I'm going to take the 3/4 inch, and I'm going to mix up some path color, which was, if you remember, I used burnt sienna and a little bit of quinacridone gold. And even a little bit of yellow ochre. Okay. Kind of a mixture. A mixture of different colors. That way you don't have one that's straight out of the palette, you have a mixture. And then what I'm going to do now is use a little tapping motion. Now I'll cover up my area up here just a little bit. Just cover that up. Okay, now I'm going to just tap the brush, get a little texture here on the path. Make it look like little pebbles or little rocks or something. I don't want it to be a smooth path. I want it to be a little rustic path with some pebbles and rocks. As I come forward, I'll get a little more, a little thicker. Okay. All right, so I just added a little bit of splatter to the bottom of the pathway there to get a little texture, more texture. Okay. So today's lesson really is a lot about texturing. I did a lot with brushes, number one, and splatter. Wet on wet is also a texture technique with a spray bottle texture. Then I did a sponge, which created the bushes and the tree foliage. That's another texture, and then the splatter with the brush itself. Now I thought what I would do now is just add a few brush strokes now for shadows. And what I want to do here is let me show you another technique. Now here's one I did earlier, and this is wet media acetate, which is a clear plastic. It's wet media, which means I can use watercolor on it. And what I can do here is I can take a color and I can plan out my shadow pattern without getting it on the paint itself. So I can practice my shape before I do the painting. So I can get my pattern on paper, on the acetate, before I actually put it down on the paper itself. So I can practice where I want to put the shadow pattern on the painting before I do it. So that's the purpose of the wet media acetate. And I can use that for my design and bring it over before I do the actual painting. And I think rather than doing it on that one, I can do it on this one. I've done this one ahead of time. I did the splattering. I did the splattering on the. So let me go ahead and put let me go ahead and put the my plan, and what I had a plan here. This was the plan I did ahead of time on piece of. What I did was I copied the paper on regular printer paper, and I went ahead and drew in a shadow pattern. So that's the shadow pattern I'm going to use. So I'm going to start up here. I'm going to start up here at the top. Again, this is going to be abstract also. It's not going to be, you know, you don't look for a lot of detail. Just a hint, just an impression of a shadow. And as I come down here, I'm going to get a bigger brush. Leave some white light areas open. They're coming through the trees and bushes. Okay, and then adding a shadow pattern to the actual painting. Okay, gives it a little more dramatic feeling, a little more of a sense of depth and so forth. And let's put a mat board around this. I'm going to put a mat board around the first one. Where is it? I moved it. There it is. Okay, this one's still wet, but I'm going to go ahead and put the board around it anyway to let it show it off. Okay. All right, there's the finished painting. I didn't put the shadow pattern on this one because it's still wet, but I can always add it in later on to finish off the painting if I wanted to. One thing I did leave out was the background here. I see it already. There's a little darker tree here. This is a continuation of the pathway behind the bridge, and then a little hint of shadow back here in the grass, in the trees, bushes, and so forth. So the continuation, as you go over the bridge, this pathway continues on back behind the other side. So by putting in a little dark spot there behind the bridge, gives you a little hint of the continuation of the bridge. Okay, So, summarizing what we did today, we painted the impact area, which was the bridge, and we added the wet on wet background with lots of different colors, autumn colors. And then I added in some texture with spray bottles. And then I added in texture with the sponge, and then also added texture in with the splattering of the larger brush. And then as an add-on, I added a shadow pattern to this particular painting here to show, you know, a little more dramatic part of the painting is by adding a shadow pattern into the finished painting. So let's go to my main table, my main camera. Get me back here. Okay, well that was an interesting exercise today, and I wanted to do this. I wanted to do the cover bridge, but then I started talking about after I did the bridge, then I add in all those elements here, the background trees on wet technique, and then added in the trees with sponges and spray bottles, which gives me an extra texture, and then the splattering on top of the pathway. So there were several techniques I showed today that makes the painting a lot more interesting, and I hope you enjoyed that. And if you have any questions, okay. All right. Okay, thank you for watching today, and if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments below. The description of the video will be in the description, and some of the links I showed today also be there. So I'll be back again next week on Thursday at 2:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So also tonight at 7:30, I'll be back here on this channel with Simply Drawing with Everett, and I'm going to be drawing some trees with a pen and ink demonstration. So you might want to check that one out. It may be interesting also. So I'll see you tonight at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or I'll see you next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with more watercolor demonstrations. So until then, you all be safe, and